I usually start each episode with a piece that I've written, that I've spent time on, that I've gotten to kind of marinate about of what I want to speak on in relation to the guests that I have on this show. And today I'm going to be a little bit more off the cuff. I tend to overthink how, anything that I'm really, really excited about, I can't believe that it's happening. It feels kind of a little bit like a pinch me moment. I can overthink to the point of where my mind just becomes a blank screen, a blank Word document staring back at me with just that little cursor just beeping, saying, say something, say something. This also happens to me when I run into someone that I'm a big fan of. I do not do well when I see, famous people in the wild that I'm a huge fan of. I am not someone that runs up to meet my hero. I will hide far away in the back corner and just stare at them like a creeper. That is how I handle those situations, because if I were to walk up to them, I just turn into that blank page with that cursor just waiting for me to say something. So I'm just going to be a little bit more off the cuff today because this blank page just keeps staring at me. And the reality is I'm just so excited about today's episode because I got to be a fan. I love reality television. I've been a very big fan for a long time. I grew up watching Real World and Road Rules. I watched, The Simple Life. I watched the first season of The Bachelor way back in the day. I've been part of Bachelor Nation, a big fan. I was very heavy into Teen Mom OG. I watched every season of Jersey Shore. I know way too much about the Jersey Shore. I mean, I could not retain anything from history class in high school, but Jersey Shore history, let's go. I will go to that game trivia night anytime. I'm late to the Real Housewives franchises. This has just been in the last couple of years that I have dove in, and that's really the only way you can do it, I have found, is you got to just jump in. You can't just dip your toe into the Real Housewives. You just got to cannonball in. And that's exactly what I did. I finally got over being intimidated by the fact that I was too late to the party, too late to the game. And all in one year, I just dove in to, just casually starting to watch. I watched The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. I watched The Real Housewives of Orange County, Real Housewives of New York, and Real Housewives of Potomac. I felt like that's what I could handle at the time. And I just couldn't get enough. I loved not only watching these shows on a week-to-week basis, I missed that form of television. By the way, I didn't realize how much I missed the anticipation of seeing a new episode, just waiting for an entire week to see the next episode. Because now so many things are streaming, you get it all at once, you binge watch it. And so it was so fun to be back in that kind of traditional format of watching a show and be so excited for what used to be called water cooler talk. Like you'd recap what happened on the show the next day when you were, with friends or around a group of people. But nowadays it happens online on social media. So that was, I just fell in love with not only the Housewives franchises, I started loving these housewives. I loved the storylines. I loved the way that the shows were produced. I loved also the community that, it is involved and lives on within the franchises online. It has become my form of meditation, of just like a peaceful place. It is something that anchors me in a stressed out week. I can know that I'm going to get to my Housewives night and I can just watch and kind of quiet my brain on everything else and just purely just enjoy it. It's not even a guilty pleasure. It is like, it's a pleasure. And I appreciate the work that these women do and that the producers do and that Andy Cohen does. If you've not ever watched any of the Housewives show, I really, truly, why not just try it, cannonball in. There's a fantastic book called Not All Diamonds in Rosé by Dave Quinn. And it is essentially, it's like the story of how the Housewives franchise became. It is like a great anthology to each and every season, except for one, because one is much newer. So even if you're too intimidated by the shows the franchises that have been on for many, many years, one that you can easily jump into because there's only 3 seasons out is The Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. And that is the first time that I watched one of these franchises from the very beginning. And these housewives came to play. It is a fantastic series of the franchise. And immediately within season 1, I already had a of course there's different personalities and that are that are like super entertaining and really funny. But there was one housewife in particular where I was like, ooh, she's so cool. In a dream world, we're best friends. And that would be so fun. And I was like, oh, that'd be so cool to be, besties. And it just so happens, here we are, there's 3 seasons later. I have reached out on social media and, I couldn't believe it, but Heather Gay responded and was interested in coming to sit with me and be interviewed on this podcast. If you have not watched The Real Housewives, that's okay. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Heather. Heather also has a book coming out called Bad Mormon. If you do watch The Real Housewives, you know that it's been heavily, her writing the book and why she's written the book has been heavily featured in this last season of the show. And so I get to just fangirl. I am so excited to hang out with my bestie who has no idea that she's my bestie, and just be a fan because it with all the things that have happened in these last couple of years, even with the pandemic, high stress levels, this was, a show that has just brought so much, just joy and just comfort. And like, it's just been a wonderful reality show experience. And Heather's been a huge part of that. So I'm so excited to be able to fan out. I'm so excited to also get to know more about Heather's life before she entered the franchise. And that's really what her book is about. She sent me the book before it's out now. I got it early, so I got to read it. I read it cover to cover. But just a little bit about Heather. Heather is a member of the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. And in her book, Bad Mormon, she bravely writes about her experiences of growing up in the Mormon Church. And that is something that sets the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, I think, apart from the other franchises, is that kind of the extra member of the show is Mormonism. Kind of like when you watch Sex and the City, like the city of New York was like the 5th character. That's kind of how Mormonism is within the show within Salt Lake City. And so Heather writes about this in her book. She also writes about events that led to her divorce, that led to her opportunity to join the Housewives franchise. I'm just thrilled that Heather is willing to come onto this podcast because she could not be more of an example of a super bloom. Her story is perfect for all the reasons why I wanted to start this podcast. So I will tell you a little bit about Heather and her book, which is what we're going to be discussing today, because it's really her lead up to joining the franchise of the Real Housewives franchises. So her book, Bad Mormon, is all the lead up before we see her on screen for the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City. In Bad Mormon, Heather Gay bravely writes about her experiences of growing up in the Mormon Church, as well as the events that led to her divorce, her opportunity to join the Housewives franchise, and Heather's separation from the church in recent years. And I just want to prepare you for this interview because if you are a big Housewives fan and you're just like eager for like all the dirt, like I totally get it. There are a million Reddit chat rooms and interviews and Instagram pages and TikTok breakdowns and post-show segments and a whole bunch of podcasts that just gets you all the burning fandom questions that just like digs up all that crazy dirt. And I get that. I totally understand it. You're wanting to get that dirt, but this is not the interview for that. That is not what I'm trying to do here today. Heather makes it a safe place to not be burdened by shame that doesn't belong to us. And instead, she shows us that we can be an accepting and a willing participant in the process of our own self-growth. Her being freaking hilarious in her confessionals and in her book doesn't hurt either. She's very, very funny, and has such a kind, open heart. You can feel all of this and more when you read her memoir, Bad Mormon, which is out. It's out now. And again, I read it cover to cover. It's fantastic. She also has an audio version that she reads, which is a beautiful way to take in a book when you get to hear someone tell their own story. So until you can get your hands or your ears on a copy, please enjoy my conversation with Heather Gay. I am so excited to be speaking with you. And I feel like there's so many things to talk about. Obviously, I read your book. Thank you for sending it early. And there was so much I didn't know because obviously I watched the show and I follow you on social media. But I just feel like the important place to start is, who would have thought a bad Botox job would be so life-changing?
I mean, I know you're a skincare aficionado, and Botox, how embarrassing is it to walk around with bad Botox and not know that it's absolutely noticeable to everyone except you? You know, it was this horrifying realization that, like, I have no self-divination at all with what my face is doing and how I'm aging and how it's perceived by people. That was a telling moment, but it was the breakthrough moment that really created everything.
It really did. And so we'll get there. We'll definitely get there within this conversation. But I laughed so hard because I've also had a bad Botox moment. I haven't done a lot of Botox in my life because I feel like I'm kind of cursed when it comes to plastic surgery, which is a whole other podcast episode. But I got my masseter muscles injected with Botox and they did too much. So then I couldn't smile. Like, I just always looked like concerned and like my face just always looked very like I was sucking on a lemon and it lasts for like 6 months. It was like a very interesting period of time where like my smile was taken away from me. So I'm glad that at least you had more positive stuff come out of the failed Botox.
I mean, it didn't like dissolve my joy.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a metaphor, though, to have your smile taken away. And a funny housewife full circle is when I did my first casting audition tape, you know, that I talk about in the book, but I didn't talk about this particular detail. I had gotten Botox in my chin to get rid of that orange peel chin. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't speak either. So I had to do the interview holding my chin.
You did.
So I had full motion of I didn't even put that in the book. I just realized.
But we make it work.
Yeah,
we make it
you
work.
You lost your smile, and I auditioned for Housewives holding my chin. So
you had to pull yourself up by your chin.
Chin up, girl.
That's what you got to chin up. Well, in diving into your, obviously beyond your book, just reading other interviews that you've been a part of. There was I read an interview that came out in 2020 before the show premiered that you had with the Salt Lake Tribune, and that you mentioned, you spoke about why you wanted to join the franchise in relation to also your experience growing up Mormon. And one of the things that you said, which was just really kind of hit me in the heart, was you said that transitioning from your faith felt like a slow bleed. And the fact that that's where it all started. And I think that we forget now, a couple seasons into the franchise of Salt Lake City, the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, that is where you began at the start of this franchise. So I want to, for anyone that doesn't really know much about you or your story, your book is called Bad Mormon. Obviously, you grew up Mormon. And I think that in pop culture media, we know, like, the Book of Mormon, we imagine people coming up to doorsteps and in suits when they're young teenagers trying to like welcome you to Mormonism. I'm trying to think what other like stereotypes that there are, but
they're like kind of the Mormon bloggers, the mommy bloggers.
Yes. The mom talk, but with the Mormons,
right?
Mormon mom talk. But can you explain a little bit about just maybe like a baseline of what Mormonism is for anyone that doesn't know?
The top line of Mormonism is that it's a Christian faith, a Protestant faith that emerged in the 1800s and has just had exponential growth. But it's a church that believes in the Bible, but also believes in a second book of scripture that they feel is divine, and another testament of Jesus Christ when he visited America during the 3 days that he was in the tomb in Jerusalem. So it's kind of like this add-on scripture that we added to the Bible. And we believe in modern day revelation, which is like prophets. We are run by an organization of men. We believe that it's a patriarchal organization and only men have power, and only men can organize and be in charge of men, but women can be in charge of other women and children. And it's just a Christian faith that is far reaching. And it's also an institution and a culture that informed, every decision in my life from the time I was born. I thought that Mormonism was like the world's faith. It was the center of my universe. I didn't even know it was a small Protestant religion. I thought it was the world's religion and that ultimately everyone would be converted to Mormonism. It was the only true church on the face of the earth. And we were the only one that had all of the scriptures, all of the knowledge, and really the key and plan to a happy life. The plan of happiness came from Mormonism. And I really didn't know anything different until the plan of happiness like imploded in front of me,
Well, and you began to start questioning things, which comes usually later in those, middle school, teen years, as I think our brains, our bodies, our hormones, everything begins to develop and we start to question things. It's actually, it's a good thing. It is a healthy thing at that age. You can talk to any psychologist. Like, it is your job in your teen years and tween years to question everything around you. But it was so beautiful and idyllic to hear you talk about your childhood. I mean, you grew up, there's 6 of you, right? 3 girls, 3 boys.
Yep.
Both your parents also Mormons from day one. It's not like you guys converted in the middle of your childhood. And you were always surrounded by a lot of community, a lot of family, and a lot of love. And so I can see where you looking back at these young years, why would you question anything when, it's the same thing. Like I grew up going to church. My parents were not so religious where I have any kind of qualms about it at this point. Like I didn't feel what I know other people who grew up very involved in their church might feel later on in life. But I loved Sundays. I was like, it's the rituals, it's going to lunch after, it's the church bands. Like, it was fun.
Yeah. Why would I strive or look anywhere else when when it seemed to be the perfect plan? It worked. When everything fits into that mold, it's really beautiful. It's a nuclear family with ritual and tradition and faith and community. And even living in Denver and not like in the heart of Mormonism in Salt Lake, there was that absolute community. I've always felt like I had a greater family because of the church. And so when you start to question that, like you said, in your teen years, and you develop identity that doesn't fit in, instead of saying, oh, I'm going to look elsewhere, you just kill off those parts of yourself that don't fit in, because that urge to belong and to be accepted is really the strongest, emotion I felt. Is I wanted to be connected to my parents and to my siblings and to this community. And if that meant I had to change and, die inside, so be it, because it was worth it. The sacrifice would be worth it in order to be accepted and to belong.
I feel like there's also an undercurrent of, once you start to hit those teen and tween years, and not just you in general, I just mean with anyone I know who's grown up very deep in a religion, that all of a sudden starts to go, no, this is shameful, this is wrong. It's usually around those years. And there was just one story in chapter within the book that it really struck me. And I feel like this is not specific to Mormonism. It also happens in so many other religious organizations where you were basically brought in, and I don't know, it's not a priest. It's like who?
It's our equivalent of a priest. It's a bishop, but he's just a married dad. So he's not a professional. All of our religious leaders are members of the community. It's a lay clergy. So he's a dad with a normal job, but he also dedicates like half of his life to being a priest to our parish.
Yeah. I had, which chapter I'm talking, where you go in
totally.
And he asks you about whether you've been kissing, touching, having sexual thoughts, whether you've acted on them, for you to describe them to him. And it's so interesting where all of a sudden you go through this idyllic, experience within a religion and community. And then you have a moment like that where you're just like, oh, wait, nope, let's just park the car here for a minute and just shine some lights and go, wait, this is not okay. This is not okay at all. And at what point, in the moment, you don't know better or not. And I just can't, just reading that, I was like, oh no. And this sets up so much for what can happen for anyone in the rest of their life when it comes to feeling shame, feeling safe, trusting adult authority figures, their own perspective on who they are and their self-worthiness, their sexuality, all of it. I felt like that just like stopped me in my tracks reading that.
Yeah, I love that you felt the poignancy of that, because I too felt like when you're steeped in a faith and you're being, questioned about your amoral thoughts, feelings, or practices, it's the greater really tragedy is that you as a young adult shape who you actually are, because you just think, well, wait, I am having those thoughts. Those thoughts are bad. I'm going to shut them down. And I think for a lot of queer people in the church, they just felt like, well, I'm not going to tell the bishop that. I'm just going to pretend it's not happening. I'm going to deny who I am. I'm going to deny what I need. I'm going to deny what I want, because he's obviously asking me, because if I answer the question in the wrong way, I'm full of shame. I'm going to be punished. I'm going to be ousted, so it shapes how we even identify ourselves, let alone, identify to our external community. And that's where the unpacking and the mental baggage comes from, I think, because that duty to self and duty to God, it gets reversed at a time where it's crucial that we figure out who we actually are. But we're so dedicated to the practice of the faith and to our family and to the religion that we deny our duty to self, and we deny feelings we're having. We deny who we might actually be. I mean, I wanted to be a 110-pound homemaking blonde mother, and that's not who I am. I'm a lot of things that don't fit in that box. But guess what? The church didn't change to accommodate me. I changed to accommodate the expectations of me.
Did you remember events like that, or did they kind of start coming back to you when you started writing the book?
No, I mean, I remember them. It's weird, the things that leave an imprint, I read an article you wrote about Christmas traditions, and like, as I'm like you, like over the top, just trying to create these huge moments. Mm-hmm. But then when I would reflect back on what I loved about Christmas, it was never like the Ewok village, it was like something, it was just the unpacking of the ornaments, the cookies that you could expect, the night you all do gingerbread houses, and it's the small things. So that really helped inform a lot of the stories that I shared in the book. But I also kept journals. I kept extensive journals because I think at heart, it makes me emotional to say it, but I think I always was a writer,
Yeah.
But that wasn't an option for me. And so these journals were funny, and my letters during my mission and my letters to my friends, like, this is before texting. So we wrote physical notes, and I have folded notes about the boys I liked, about my bishop's interviews. I kept everything. And it's the one time that, Marie Kondo got it wrong because all of this sparked so much joy for me, like, it's to go back and be a hoarder and see who I was and see how I didn't even acknowledge who I was to myself. I just would deny it, like, I'm never going to think that again, or I can't believe I said that. And instead of kind of indulging the creative, and this is for all women, all people, we figure out what edges we're bumping into, and we either lean in or we cut them out. And I think I had a tendency to cut out anything that didn't make me a better version of a wife or mother in that particular box I had been planted in.
But also there's elements of that part. I'm the same way. Like the type A, like, hold on, what do you need me today? Accommodation. Like, you need me to accommodate? I will
Yeah.
accommodate the hell out of it. Like, this is why I think I was a good personal assistant. I'm good. Like, if I have a 9 to 5, like, be here, stand here, do what we ask of you. I'm like, great. I love that kind of structure.
I
But
do too.
that served
Absolutely.
you so many other times in your life. But when it comes to, you know, specifically to an organized religion like Mormonism, that is not where it's going to serve you. It's going to, it's an impossible accommodation because it is it erases everything that, I mean, it sounds like I'm not Mormon. I've never practiced Mormonism. I'm not trying to shame anyone that is continuing to practice, but also it sounds like it just really makes you detach from your thoughts, your light, your ideas, and there's only one way of doing things. Did you ever have these conversations with your mom, especially in years of adolescence? I mean, because she was very passionate about Mormonism as well. It's not like you were in
Yeah.
a family where people were like, I don't know, I don't want to do this, Mom. Like,
Yeah.
everyone
Follow
was,
your heart. I
yeah.
mean, they will follow your heart, but you better hope your heart is pure, because if you're following your heart and you have a pure heart, then you're going to follow it right back to the core of Mormonism, because that's all that is good and true. So you can't put that on a kid, and my mom absolutely supported every single, even inkling that I showed any affinity for. I was in dance, gymnastics, ballet, tap, you know, piano lessons from the time I was little. She would encourage me to enter the book fair poster contest, like just would help me write. I talk about her helping with my watercolor, just anything. She just championed it and championed me being a homemaker and knowing how to take care of a baby and cook a casserole and do laundry. I mean, I can't imagine the energy as a mom myself that it took to school me in so many things that we just outsource because we've been given the privilege and the ability to do and permission to do it. But her world was her children. That was her masterpiece. That was the options that had been given her. But I know that she too was a great writer, and a great creative source. But she flourished by kind of imbuing all of us with her skill set, because that's what she was taught good moms do.
Mm-hmm.
She was entrepreneurial. She had all these little side things, but it was always within the context of, wife and mother first. So I felt championed, but within that same glass castle, like I wanted to get a degree. I wanted to be good at piano. I wanted to be an artist. I wanted all these things so that I could bless my home and bless my husband and children, but not so that I could, be on TV or have a career or not be home every night, blessing my children with the talents that God had given me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just contained. And I call it a glass castle because it's beautiful, but it's also martyrdom, and it's also a little bit of she who suffers most wins. And it's also
that's the thing. The she who suffers most wins. Like,
and
you
that's
don't
Glennon
get a
Doyle.
medal at the end of it. You don't it's the championing of your children and the people around you. But at the end of the day, we wake up alone, we go to sleep alone with ourselves. And if you're living only for everyone around you, like, you're going to hit a breaking point at some point within
But
that.
when you hear people describe a good mother, they always describe her as just selfless and dedicated and absolutely accommodating everyone around her. My mom, it's not ever about, my mom was such a great mom. She went out, she rebuilt her life after divorce. She wrote a book. She went on TV. She got a black eye. You know what I mean? Those aren't the ways, but that's what makes me a good mom today.
Yeah.
That's the mom I want to be to my daughters. And I think I want my daughters to be women, to see that and to realize that resilience and independence and honoring the creative flames they are is how they can honor me instead of it being opposite.
Do you think you were in a rush to grow up, or do you think your experience growing up in the church kind of guided you towards that? Because you would go on, you'd obviously, like, graduate high school, you had the opportunity to go on mission, which You know what? That sounds like a I'll go to the south of France for 18 months. I don't know everything you do in a mission, but I know I love the south of France.
Right.
So, I mean,
I
you
loved
were
it
still
too.
you were still operating within the world of the church, but you were doing these wonderful, wonderful things and having experiences away from home. But then everything happened really, really quickly as far as meeting someone, getting married, and then having children almost, not immediately back to back, but pretty close towards the end. You have 3 daughters now
Yeah.
that are all older, but this happened very, very fast. What, you were in your early 20s?
Early 20s. But you have to realize that to me, I was a spinster. I mean, I had missed all of the milestones. I was biding my time so that my real identity in life could begin. And I believed that that was solely contained in a marriage and family. And I think that I didn't have shining examples of women out there doing it all, women out there postponing childbirth. I didn't have a single person saying, you could be great at all these things, or you should pursue an advanced degree. You only pursued an advanced degree if you graduated from college and got from a mission and still weren't married. There was no, cultural currency in that. It was just really, everything was about who are you dating? Are you having babies yet? And when all of your friends are married at 19 and 20 and having babies quickly, I mean, some of my friends are grandparents, 5, 6, 7 times over. And
Wow.
it's just a different context. I had no map or plan to be anything other than a wife and mother. So everything was contingent on me finding that man. All of those experiences I had up to that point were just me putting a paw on the treadmill until a knight and his steed came to give me an identity, give me a purpose, and the most important thing, make me be visible. I felt invisible when I was just a single girl trying to make it in the world. Nothing, no one was interested in me, in anything I had to say or do. The second I got married, I had credibility in my community, with my friends. It was like, it was validity. And that I felt that so tangibly that when I lost it, getting divorced, that's why the floor kind of went out from under me, because I remembered what it felt like to not matter.
You were worthy. It became your level of worthiness within in the social currency of your world.
Like, my life can begin because I have a man, and I want, like, a boy wakes up every day and he never changes his name. He never thinks, well, I hope I can have children. I hope that someone will marry me. He just thinks, who am I? Who do I want to be? And what life do I want to create? And if we think about the mentality shift of that versus a lot of women that grow up, especially in high demand religions, it's really stunning the way that it changes our brain chemistry and what we expect of ourselves.
Well, and you didn't just meet someone who grew up kind of in the church. I mean, he is your ex-husband, the father of your children, was very prominent within the church. Just he historically, his name, right, his family history within the church. It was not just Heather met a guy. It's you came home being like, guess what, guys? I met the guy,
and
I am set. Yeah.
That changed my chemistry too, because I would say his name and then I would see that, all of a sudden I'm not just getting married, I'm marrying somebody that they care about because everyone knew about his grandfather. Mm-hmm. So it's probably how, I imagine it's how Meghan Markle felt, when she, I felt like this heroic moment when she married a prince. She was a divorced single girl over 30 and she married the Prince of England. You know what I mean? It was a moment for second chapters for women everywhere. And I think that when someone all of a sudden takes away everything you are and your validity and credibility and importance is based on who you're married to, it changes the way you perceive yourself too.
Well, and then you start fulfilling the role that you were always destined to fulfill. And again, you're in your early 20s, right?
Mm-hmm. Early 20s.
Early 20s. And you're like, I've done it. Check, 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 check. Here I am. Now this is going to be the rest of my life. And you start having babies. And it was so fun to also read about Because even before you got married, you've been an entrepreneur for a very long time. I will save it for anyone that wants to read the book or that will read your book after this conversation. But there was like a jewelry business at one point. I mean, you've been you were in the running for a big entrepreneurial competition that you came second to a very huge company. And then even in your marriage, you're popping out babies and you're like, what can I do in my spare time? Oh, maybe just take up photography and start a photography business. I mean, it is kind of, have you ever seen Frozen 2? I know your girls are older.
No, I've seen Frozen 1, but not Frozen 2.
So watch Frozen 2. It's going to fuck you up. I'm going to just let you know now. Because the whole thing is that there's a calling. There's like now a calling for Elsa, and she's trying to ignore it, and she's trying to just like not listen to it, not pay attention to it, but she just can't. And she just has to go through all the like chaos to finally be like, oh, if I just would have listened to the calling all along, it just would have expedited all of this pain and suffering trying to get here. But
I can never watch Frozen 2. I can never, and certainly not around my children, like privately under a blanket with like tissues.
Yes, just be prepared. On a day when you just need like an emotional breakthrough, watch some Frozen 2. But you always had that entrepreneurial calling out there. And so even here you are married, you've got the kids, you've done everything, you've checked all the boxes, and you still know that like there's something else that you want to be doing with your life. And the way that you wrote about, the ending of your marriage, I think is really important for anyone who has experienced divorce or has experienced separation, because it is very, you put the words on it's not a gray area. It's very black and white, and the responsibility that I think you are both willing to share also with your ex-partner of just how you got there and wanting other things and realizing that even though it's what you signed up for, you didn't want that anymore as far as just being the stay-at-home mom, just answering to someone all the time.
And bigger than that, even I didn't want the fairy tale to only be mom and dad have children grow old together with same mom and dad. Like I felt like that fairy tale was taken away and I didn't have another one to replace it with. Like I didn't have any way of knowing how to climb out of that blackness and that grief. It's like, it's more than a broken heart. It's not even loss of romantic love. It's loss of identity and purpose, but you're still a mother. So you can't even pull yourself up by your bootstraps because you have to love and accommodate this man still because he's the father of your children. And you have to redefine yourself now with the tag of failure that you didn't ever want. Like people walk away from things and fail things and it's like, okay, great. But like I believed in myself that I could withstand and endure anything but at what cost? But it was the darkest, blackest time because I had no identity and no purpose, but I had these 3 children that I loved more than anything. And I felt like not only I had failed the marriage, but I had failed them because now they weren't going to get that childhood I had. And what other purpose what did I have on this earth?
Well, and also, did you feel like you failed your religion? And did you feel like, because what is divorce? How is divorce looked at within Mormonism? What was your relationship with Mormonism at the time?
I was a devout Mormon and I believed that my faith and our combined faith would get us through any marital troubles. I just believed it didn't matter. I didn't even think marital troubles mattered because we were both in this triangle relationship with God. It's the husband and wife, and then they both have an independent relationship with God, and he keeps that perfect storm, brewing. But it just, I felt like I had failed my faith. And I also felt I described it as like a skin tag. Like I was just making everyone uncomfortable because I didn't get remarried and I didn't, drift off. I was still showing up at church with my 3 darling girls in tow and trying to contribute and trying to be a part of the community. And I was, but it doesn't work when you are, when you make everyone uncomfortable a little bit because you're not going on the trips, you're not invited to the things. It's like, who invites the single mom and her kids? We're a church based on families.
Did you feel a little, I mean, little sliding scale use of the word, but did you feel ostracized?
I felt loved. I should say that the people around me were always wonderful to me, so much so that I kept going, and I didn't want to leave or hurt their feelings. But I felt like a failure, and it, I felt like I put everyone in an uncomfortable position. They had to be careful they didn't say something like, ask your husband. It's like everybody had to code switch when I was around. And, if you're someone that's kind of empathic and you are an accommodator and a pleaser, it's very nuanced and the microaggressions are very real. And it's bigger than that. It was my story and my experience, but it wasn't being listened to or heard because we don't really talk about divorce. There's very few divorces. I didn't have any single thriving divorced friends. I had one divorced friend who was living in her parents' basement and raising her kids as a single mom, but with so much family support. And I didn't have that. So I felt alone and burdened, but also putting on a smiling, strong face to show that I was still a contributor to the community.
Mm-hmm. You gave yourself a temporary palsy.
That was the reckless driving and the darkness.
But that's also part of, we'd like to think that, people get divorced and then they move on and then they just go out and the other funny thing to me is I think that when people get divorced, how common people just go so are you dating? So are you just back out there? What's going on? Are you just having the best time of your life? It's what? How is this how society approach it? It's just this baseline approach to anyone who's going through divorce. Whereas it was so powerful to just be able to read your guts on the table of just this is how it was, and it wasn't overnight, and it takes time. And you wrote about periods of time where you were having fun and being frivolous, thinking that you were on the other side of it, when in reality, maybe you're just putting some Band-Aids over it. But it's, I can't imagine, also with your 3 children, you did not have an established career at that point, trying to figure out the finances of that, an ex-partner who's also completely moving on with their life. And it's that what now? Now what? You had a plan before. You had this wonderful plan, and you can and you can check it all off. But now when there's no plan, it's well, now what the hell am I supposed to do? Who am I supposed to accommodate now?
Yeah, and who am I supposed to be? And if I felt there's a glass ceiling on my expectations before, now it's I had to be living on the dole. I had to just subsist off of alimony and child support, and I was grateful to get it. But that changed my mentality too. It's now I just have to make do because I had hinged everything on him being the provider and the presider and the wagon, the star that I had hitched my wagon to. And so now it was just me in a wagon with my girls. And I felt this duty to the family and to just be the martyr, or to kind of nourish who I was inside. And guess what went out? Martyrdom. Martyrdom went out, and hopelessness went out, and depression went out. And the only thing that even jolted me out of any of that was the opportunity to be a real housewife. And there's some deep irony in that.
Yes, so much. It's yes. Going back to the bad Botox job, you basically, unbeknownst to you, your words were walking around looking like Spock. I did not come up with those words. Those are your words. Someone had offered you to come in and in exchange for photography, because you were still working as a photographer, to come in exchange for your photography business, to give you some great Botox. And then cut to, not long after, you get the med spa.
Yeah, I bought the business from him.
You bought the business.
I was offered to be a partner, and then I bought it out from him. And then I found a business partner that really, the best equivalent would be I finally had a spouse that supported my dreams, and when yeah. I had a wife, I felt like a working man with a wife that understood me and supported me. And we became this phenomenal partnership. And that gave me confidence in my ability to have functioning, wonderful, productive relationships, non-romantic, of course, but she was the source that took this business, and we were cooking with gas. We just took it to the next level so quickly. And it was a kind of nice parallel to who I might have been with a different support system when I was young, not to criticize the child that I grew up with, but just to show that context, for me at least, was everything.
Exactly. You hadn't seen that. And when you kind of see it, I'm sure your girls are proud of you. I know that you just know that, but also do you have time where you're like, I'm proud of myself all the time to be like, I'm doing it. Like, and whether or not they notice it right this second or see it 10 years from now, that always feels so wonderful when your children say that they're proud of you, but taking that moment to be like, fuck, I'm proud of myself.
I haven't gotten to be proud of myself. There's definitely been moments of admiration for myself, especially when I had the chance to record the audiobook and I read my story like from start to finish. I just saw suddenly the resilience and the rags to riches and the kind of the strong, badass girl that I was through all of it. And it had always been just riddled with so much shame and disappointment and failure and that word bad, that to be proud felt, too far of a reach. But I admire that I've survived. And I feel like my children's, like they really fortify me and help me learn to be proud of myself, because I want them to be proud of who they are and boastful and, strong and confident. And they're a different generation, and they were raised in a different way. And so they are in so many ways my exemplars, like we went out to dinner last night and my middle daughter, Georgia, was turning 17, and I don't know why makes me emotional, but she just asked the hostess if she had a charger and she could plug in her phone. And I, in a million years, if even knew that she was going to do it, I'd be like, no, don't bother them. Don't ask, don't do it. And she came back to the group and I said, where'd you go? And she's like, oh, I just went and asked the hostess if she had a charger, because at dance class today, our teacher said, ask for what you need. If you need something, ask for it. And I wanted to spontaneously burst into tears. And I was like, so proud of her. Not that I didn't, first of all, that I didn't interfere,
which is so hard, so hard.
And in that moment, it was such a learning moment for me. And I just looked at her and I was like, you're goddamn right. If you ask for it and you got it. And she was like, should take pictures. She wasn't weird about not being able to, take a picture on her 17th birthday. And I am deeply proud of the strong women that they are. And I want to take full credit for it, but as a mom, it is luck of the draw.
Yes. You never, there is. Never know. No. Yes, it is mostly them. Yeah.
But in a way, it's how I know God loves me, because they were what I needed. He knows me because I needed strong kids that could caretake their crazy ass mother.
Well, and beyond, in those moments, I feel like it's that all of a sudden, do you feel like there was just a little unlocking, a little extra breath in your heart and your lungs that went, oh, she's okay. She's going to be okay. She's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because you're so vulnerable. Easier. Yeah. And you just, your heart is beating outside of your chest for the rest of your life. But when you get moments like that, it gives you a little layer of protection. Like, oh, I don't have to, be in charge of all of this. They're going to be okay. And that gives me chills to say.
Did you share with your daughters what was going to be included in the book so that they would be prepared? Did they know a lot of the things? Because you do talk about, divorce and their dad and the, periods of time that were maybe a little scary, hot-tempered between you and their dad.
Yeah.
To say the least.
To put it mildly, to put a gloss on it, they witnessed all of that. So that is a memory that changed their brain chemistry forever. And that is something that we had never talked about openly, but they were too young, and I really felt like you have to shield your kids from all of it. But they were old enough now that we read the story and we talked about it, and they've read all parts of it. I would read it aloud to them. We would laugh, we'd cry. There are a lot of great stories that got cut, but that will be in my second book. And so they were a part of all of it. And, giving them the chance to kind of read it objectively and talk about it and say, I'll never forget that night. And that was, powerful for me to know that this legacy will outlast me. And it's important that they that they feel seen and heard and validated, and they know that it was bad, or they wouldn't have gotten divorced, because we idealize everything. He's invited to every single family activity. I try to never say anything negative, which is very, very hard, and my mom put his name on the family wreath at a relative's passing, so it's like, it's important that I think they understand the context of the divorce, and that it wasn't just two selfish people that couldn't make it work. There was conflict there. And, hopefully they're happier and better because we ended the marriage.
Yeah. And just for context, and it's in the book but it was a very big argument that turned, that were to the point where you called 911 physical. Yeah. Yes. It turned physical. So I thought about that, and I assumed you had probably talked about it with your children, because they are also all teenagers at this point, and what that experience has probably been like in bringing you all together and having an understanding. It's such an interesting age where they're at, when you start to see glimpses of your parents as not your parents, but as people.
Yeah.
And that is an important part of a legacy that you leave for your children too, in certain regards at the right time. You mentioned your relationship with God, and I think that this all ties into your start on The Real Housewives. So again, so you start, which would become Beauty Lab and Laser. Mm-hmm. And in starting that, you started doing other events around town, which that's how you met Meredith, who's a member of the Real Housewives of Salt Lake, and Lisa Barlow as well. And they're the ones that kind of championed you to be a part of the show. Got you auditioning within the process, which you did such a great job writing about the process of becoming a housewife, because I think people are always curious to the extent of it.
And people don't usually get into the details, but I wanted everyone to know how this happened. This did not happen to people like me. And this is step by step, the process, no stuff. That's a little behind the scenes that I hope the Housewives fans will really enjoy.
Yeah, no stone unturned. Like every element of your life is it's not like you're like, I didn't know that I was going to be on reality TV. It's like, no, just from the interview process, and then you find yourself, embarking on this new experience, which is also when you're still navigating your relationship with the Mormon Church. I mean, you even went and saw someone within a bishop. Did I get the word right yet, or no?
Yeah, bishop.
Okay, a bishop. Yeah. And they mentioned that maybe you drink milk on screen when you're in a room with people with alcohol. And so that's where you started the series. And so you've been navigating this relationship with the church and this rebirth of yourself within these past 3 seasons. And I'm assuming you watched the show, you watched the episodes to see what happens.
I watched season 1 religiously. And then after season 1 reunion, it was a little hard for me to see myself. I watched season 2 religiously. Season 3, I have watched less because it's just been so out of my control. And the narrative has just been so weird that I just don't even like watching it. It just hasn't made sense. It hasn't tracked. And it's pretty deep waters and not subjects that I really want to bandy about on reality TV. So, but yes, I watch the episodes. I'm a Housewives fan at the first, before I became a housewife. But season 3 has been a little bit of a different game.
Only one of the episodes of the reunion is out so far. So, and I think that you did a really wonderful job showing up to the reunion to speak truthfully from what, because I think exactly what you're saying. It was a very confusing season. And for anyone that doesn't watch or that just needs some context of what we're talking about, on The Real Housewives, there's always trips. There's always vacations and trips. This one was in San Diego. It was a very tense, contentious trip to begin with, and which led to, a lot of activities, which leads to drinking, which leads to no food. Where was the food on this trip, by the way? It kept getting thrown into the freaking ocean. Jen Shaw, I'm like, just leave the food. Throw
just
the
a
shoes,
small
leave
meat and
the
cheese
food.
stick, something.
Don't take it out on the charcuterie, please. But there's cameras there all the time, and you're tired and you're worn down. There was one night where you guys were there was footage at 4:30, 4 something in the morning of you guys still raging. And then you woke up the next day, you had a black eye. and it scratches on your arms. And it was kind of pumped into this season of television as if like we're going to get some big dramatic payoff of realization. And this all leads into the reunion where you simply say, like, I genuinely didn't know what happened. I blacked out. It scared me. I figured that there was video footage that, I can't imagine the other conversations that went on beyond that. I'm sure you'll be asked a million times while doing the promo for this book. But what I find is significant is that this all started in which, you were raised within a church where alcohol was not allowed. A lot of
Forbidden.
shame was real. Like you've spent your life in like the childlike state of you goes to accommodating, feeling bad. Let me be better. I need to fix it. Like I'm wrong. I'm bad, 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 bad. And that is a very difficult thing to, you know, be all of a sudden we think we're all grown-ups, we think that we've got all of our shit together, and then we fuck up. And then if everyone just wants to like kind of rub your nose into the carpet, it's like, and you feel so much shame and feel bad. And that's what I saw at the reunion last week, where you're like, I didn't know, like it just looked like you were triggered in every single way you could have been triggered,
Yeah.
basically.
It was such a vulnerable time. I mean, I'm in the thick of writing the book. I'm in the thick of really unpacking all of these, shame feelings and whatever. And I think the biggest reveal to me is that I woke up with an unexplainable, horrible black eye, and immediately, instead of just saying, I'm going home or I'm going to the hospital, this is not my fault, this should not have happened to me, how did this happen to me? I said, I'll film, I'll make jokes, I'll accommodate because I'm so embarrassed and I'm so ashamed and I deserved it. And that mentality was what was in my heart. And that kept me playing coy and hoping that it would, just hoping for someone else to figure it out because it was my fault. And that's the opposite of that brain chemistry. You wake up like, I had no duty to self in that moment. I had like, if God was sending me a message, it was this giant eye.
It was big. Yeah, it was big.
Instead
it was
of
not
saying,
subtle.
something happened to me, I said, I need to fix this and make it right because I must have deserved it. And that is what I don't want, a legacy I don't want to pass on to my children.
Yeah.
And I am watching that play out on television, as messy as it is it's really pivotal in my journey. I hate to use that word, but I'm progressing daily. It's like a delayed adolescence, but I know it's messy and frustrating, and I hope that I can change and improve, but I'm so sick of that shame cycle just running my every thought and behavior. It's not healthy, and I don't know how to get out of it.
Yeah. Do you feel like it's the pendulum swing where all of a sudden you're like, nope, I'm so good, I'm so in tune with myself. And then it's just on the other side and it's, of just, I'm awful. I can't believe I did this. I'm never doing this again. I'm never doing. Yes.
This is what everyone predicted. I'm in the hands of the devil. This is what girls like me can expect of their lives. And my therapist always says, when you see that, instead of you just swing the pendulum and you go to dark and I'm shameful and I deserve this. She said, just recognize it. And she always does this little motion, like just say, okay, I'm here again. What can I do to treat myself better instead of just leaning into the dark and the shame? And I say that because I want your listeners to pat themselves on their shoulders too, because I don't think it's unique to me. I think it's something that we do a lot. We blame ourselves and like say, I'm mad at myself. I hate myself. I can't believe I did that. I'm so dumb. Those cringe moments, we make them memes, but they chisel away at our confidence and our faith in ourselves.
Well, and exactly what you said, like people that watch the show have moments like that. You know what? There is definitely someone who's gone on a girls' trip, had a little too much to drink, and like ended up like breaking their wrist. You know what I mean? Being like, well, this is embarrassing. We've all had embarrassing moments and we are all showing up for each other. And that is the hardest life lesson, especially when you've grown up in a place that says, nope, be smaller, be perfect, to all of a sudden show up for yourself and be that voice of reason and that voice of forgiveness for yourself. Because no one else, it doesn't matter if everyone else gives you grace and forgiveness. You have to give it to yourself or it doesn't count. Yeah, it does not stick. I like that's what I saw. And I know like it's going to be interesting. I mean, I know that who knows with going into next season. I know there's a lot up in the air, but I think it's it's really actually a nice opportunity right now. I know it's probably going to be an overwhelming press tour, um, to say the least. But watching you last week in that reunion, I was like, oh, she's got this. She's
Oh,
absolutely got this.
she's going to be okay.
She's gonna be okay. What have been the things that you like? If you reflect on these last 3 seasons, specifically in your relationship with, with God and the church and yourself, like, is there any kind of recurring theme that you've seen, or like a moment that you hold on to where where you've just realized? When did you hit that, like, just taking on the title of bad Mormon, where you're like, no, I can still love God and I can still appreciate all these things in my life and walk there. There is no label that sticks, and where bad Mormon is just kind of like a fun thing, but you're not.
I mean, I don't know if I'm not. I don't know what I feel like. I say bad Mormon because you can't extrapolate everything that informed my life for all until this moment and say you're divorced from it. You left the church. You can't have any, affiliation or affinity or attachment to it. It's like it's stripping me again of my identity in a different way, because I'm
you're
all
right.
things, I don't associate or believe in the doctrine or the principles of the institution, but I certainly believe in my family and my childhood and the gifts that, I learned because of these things. I just don't want to pretend that everything's a poison well and there's no way out of it. And I hope readers feel that with the book, like this is truly a love letter to the religion that broke my heart, because I didn't fit in, and it did not follow the principles that I want to live my life by or want my children to. And it is destructive. I think it hurts people, and it's got a lot of things to answer for. But that being said, what was the question? Sorry.
No, you're tying it all in there. I think I asked 4 questions in one question anyway. But I did notice that. I did actually have that written down on one of my pages of notes, of that it felt very much like a love letter. It felt like a love letter to, the positive. Your ability to write about the good, and it didn't mean that it was all good. It didn't mean it was all bad. It didn't mean that just because you had questions, you were able to also now look back and have some answers as well, and that can all exist.
Yeah.
And so, it is very funny that you've ended up, with that, your trajectory, finding you at the helm of like this Real Housewives franchise.
I know.
It is
the irony is
hilarious.
thick, and it just really, I think it's kind of a story for anyone that thinks that it ain't over till it's over. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on your life. I mean, was hopeless, and now I'm, meeting all these people. Oh, I think you asked me what was the moment that like changed, like looking back on the seasons, and it was really the fans and this community that emerged, not necessarily housewife fans, but visibility and visibility, so that I could meet people like you and like people like, that Kristen Chenoweth has been a huge support to me. Just different people that I admire that are examples, not only to me, but to my daughters, of strong, smart, capable women that are good at all things. Like can write, can sing, can act, can speak, can be funny, can be sensitive, can be, a girl's girl, can be a guy's girl. And I want my girls, all I ever wanted was everything. And I'm so grateful to be exposed and associated with women that are striving to be everything, because I want it all now too.
I love that. All I ever wanted was everything. That's please let that be your next tagline. Pitch that as one of your taglines.
I will pitch that. That's a good one.
It's so good. I'm so excited. I'm crossing everything for season 4. I know it's been a wild ride, and so much of it is out of all of your hands. But I also want to just say thank you for having choir auditions. I think that you gave such a gift this year with Lisa Barlow's performance of Away in a Manger.
I hope I get credit for her career. But yes,
I think that choir. I hope that there is also a plaque in the Beauty Lab and Laser parking lot as to where the Sprinter van was, or maybe a special Sprinter van parking next to the 15-minute Botox parking.
It's really the gift that keeps on giving, because mentally we're all in the Beauty Lab and Laser parking lot. And I'm sending you that t-shirt. So look for it. It's coming.
Perfect. Thank you. I have 5 last questions for you. Okay. It's just a little word association, no pressure. But as you and I are very similar in type A and perfectionist, perfectionism. I know you're going to take it as seriously as I usually do, but don't,
Absolutely.
it's just
Game
throw
on.
it out there. All good. Okay. Something that you like.
Smarties. I don't know why candy came to me. It's because I've been staring at a bag of nerds. I really like Wordle, though. That's my go-to answer. Wordle.
Okay. Something that you know.
Scripture.
It's wild how it just stays with you. I was wondering when you were writing it through the book, like, because like I have like the Lord's Prayer, and my 7-year-old is like, how the hell do you know that? Like, that is like blows her mind, you know? And so I just was I was wondering if it just kind of poured out of you by memory.
Yeah, it pours out of me.
Wow. Okay. Something that you hate.
Entitlement.
Something that you love. That's not family, friends. That's just something that you love.
Music.
And a quirky little fact about you.
I'm a birder. I love birds and squirrels.
Really?
Yes.
Like, do you actually know what they are? Like, do you do?
I'm working on it. I have an app called Birda, because I just bought a new house and it has this beautiful like grape vineyard and these beautiful trees. And I have bird seed out there and little bird houses. So I've been attracting all these wild birds. There's bird tracks in the snow. And I love to work on the pool and in the yard and have the birds come. But I also have high glass windows, and I've lured birds to an untimed.
Oh no.
So I'm a bird lover and a bird murderer.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to figure out what kind of tint I can do to the Audubon Society is going to pay me a visit, but I'm a birder. That's kind of a quirky little thing about me.
I love that. That's amazing. Well, congratulations on Bad Mormon. Congratulations on your beautiful aviary that you're building. That is a study of all
really
birds.
An experience is what it is.
And best of luck on this book tour. I am so excited for you, and I'm already ready for your second book to come out. Truly, I've been so excited. Oh my gosh, I didn't even speaking of Beauty Lab and Laser, I've got my like nerdy.
I love merch.
I have the fucking chills.
That moment.
My God.
Is quintessential reality TV. Like,
it's brilliant. A Super Bloom podcast is hosted by me, Candice King, produced by Melissa D. Montz and Diamond Imprint Productions, edited by Diane Kang, post-production sound by Coco Lawrence, and advertising partnership with Acast.